Right, welcome to another live broadcast. And just give you a second to join us. I'm Yoni, and I'm an adopter and a adopted person and a social worker of quite a few years standing. And I'll let Keeley introduce herself.
Hi, folks. My name is Keeley. I'm a play therapist, cracking on for 14 years now in that role. And I'm a mum of two children as well. And it's just lovely to be here and just to be able to share mine and Yoni's experience and knowledge with you.
Okay, and talk about
Yeah. So we
covers a lot of things, doesn't
it really
it?
does so much when we think about parenting. It's about all the things that we do or shouldn't do in terms of action. Actually, the words that we use are really powerful too in making our parenting successful or not successful. So I just thought today we'd have a look, because in previous sessions we've looked at gentle parenting styles,
Yeah.
attachment styles. So I thought actually language is actually a really important part of that. It's not just about carrying your baby around in a carrier all the time, or how they're fed or anything. It's about the words that we use, and that the language element of it is something that just goes on throughout all our lives, and it's so important. The language we use. So I thought we'll have a quick look at the traps that we can get into as adults when
Mm-hmm.
we're communicating with children, and then I thought we'd look at some of the positives, the ways we can kind of get round that and kind of really encourage that, because the way we speak to our children is often the way they speak back, and if you don't like it, sometimes I'm kind of thought,
Yeah.
where's that come from? And it's like, that could have come from me actually. Could I say that a bit? Or also,
Mm-hmm.
we think, it's an awful kind of moment, isn't it, where something falls out your mouth and like, oh my god, I sound just like my mom, or just like my
Yeah.
dad. It's like, I don't want to sound like that. So, it's just reflecting on that, isn't it? And just thinking about what we can do.
Mm.
So I'll just start with a few of the common traps that we can fall into with
Okay.
language. And I think, I guess some of these traps are around how we kind of manage when our children are kind of struggling with their behaviour. They're trying to show us something, that they're distressed and what they're doing is something we don't like, or it's not safe. And it's how we respond to that with language. So a real common one can be about the conversation focuses on the feeling of the adult. So, for example, you made me feel really sad when you did that. Okay, put your shoes on, don't make me get angry. So it's all about focusing on how the adult felt, and that takes me
Mm.
really from what the child is trying to express through their behaviour. You know, you got to think that all that behaviour is communication. And some of those messages are difficult, and they're shown in, some very like challenging to us behaviours. So I think also what's important there, especially in the context of like for children who have been fostered or adopted, that path that they've been on to get there,
Mm.
there's been a real focus on pleasing another person. And that doesn't teach one, it doesn't teach them how to self-regulate or take
Mm.
responsibility for themselves. But also, a lot of these children have already spent their lives trying to please another, because that's how they had to keep safe, or they're in a system and they tried to say stuff that they thought would kind of is what the adults wanted to hear, but it wasn't actually what they maybe wanted to do or to
Mm.
happen to them. So that they've done a lot of that kind of pleasing. And if we just keep it all about you need to keep pleasing me all the time and not upsetting me, we just keep reinforcing that. So then when they're out in the adult world themselves, or they find themselves in other relationships, you know where do they kind of think, actually, where are my needs here? But say when they're in
Mm.
a relationship as adults, they can get some quite sticky wickets there if they think it's always just about pleasing other people and placating them to keep them happy.
Mm.
So you know it's about thinking about that behaviour and what they're trying to communicate through it. And I think it's okay, to say when you're talking about sometimes, about your feelings about it, but it's also acknowledging their feelings and trying to find some resolution in that. So it's not just about don't do that because it makes me sad, but sometimes I feel really sad sometimes when this happens, but I want to help you to kind of resolve this. What can we do to make this better? And that's a different way of approaching it.
I was thinking about some of the conversations that people have about mindset, that actually your feelings are about your own thoughts, not about somebody else. And so the parent is really not taking responsibility for their own feelings in terms of how they're letting the actions of the child impact on them.
Yeah. That's right. We use a lot of carrots and sticks, don't we? And it's a bit like a stick, isn't it? The other day, actually, I had to hold my tongue, right? But I was just getting my children out of the car, and there was a car next to me with a dad and a boy a bit older. He was probably like about 8 or 9, and the boy didn't want to put his hat on, and the dad said to him, "You don't put your hat on, I won't be friends with you." And I thought, gosh, what a powerful message. I really did have to bite it, but I thought I'd probably just get myself in trouble if I say something. But what will happen, what message that boy got? So, when he's older and he's in trouble, he's being bullied or he's made a mistake with something, will he ever feel actually go to his dad, and say I've messed up? Because, he potentially then risks have his dad not like him, not being a friend. And I just thought, gosh, it was just one sentence, but it just felt so powerful. But I had to just hold my tongue on that. I was thinking about those messages that we give within sometimes those simple stuff. I think another super one that quite a lot of adults fall into is giving a lecture and issuing sanctions during what I'm going to call it a tantrum. When the children will meltdown and they're really angry and they're shouting and screaming and doing whatever else they do in a tantrum, is that kind of, we start trying to stop doing that, and start giving this big lecture, right? And it's absolutely wasted breath, because at that moment in time, when a child is in that state, when any of us are in that state, if we were an adult and someone was trying to, what's that meme? No one in the world has ever calmed down when they were told to calm down.
No, that's true.
We're in a different part of our brains then. We're in the fight and flight part of our brains. And when we're there, all that kind of emotional processing and that kind of rational thought stuff is shut down. So it's really just wasted air to try and kind of give them a bit of a lecture then. And I think, as adults, you're trying to do that and you're trying to impart this wisdom, and then as an adult, we can maybe get more frustrated because they're not responding to these words, but they actually just can't hear them. So, and then it just adds fuel to a fire, doesn't it? Adding a sanction, right in the middle of something, to just threaten like taking the Xbox away or something, can just tipping petrol on. So wait is my guidance there. So there might be things you want to say, and there might be things that you want to kind of place a boundary, but wait until you're both calm before you have that conversation, and at that point, the children are kind of out of that part of their brain, and they're maybe more able to kind of respond and listen and hear to what you've got to say. So save that precious breath.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, in full flow, they're just not gonna hear you. In fact, they're probably not even there in some ways physically. It's just too much going on.
I mean, if you think about when we get angry, you're just quite consumed by the emotion, and all that rational bit has gone out of the window, and it's the same for children. Yeah. So that's one just to kind of it's the trap we fall into often as adults, but it's one just to try and step back from. If you can see yourself on the precipice, that. and, and another thing about language is about, and it sounds quite obvious, and I'm sure a lot of people here actually wouldn't do this, but it's the humiliating, shaming, and putting down of a child. So I think, again, the children that are in your care already have more than enough kind of baggage, and it's about not adding to those kind of scripts with the children, even those comments that are maybe made in jest that could be received or commented in the midst of like you're in the middle of a tantrum, not to make those comments personal, like I'm fed up of you always ruining dinner time or something, 'cause I think a while ago we talked about different kinds of scripts, and I think, as families we can lay down scripts and start to kind of form roles for different people. So like, oh, they're the one who was like ruining dinner time, or they're the ones, that always like, struggle to cope with change and stuff. And they might be true that it might be that they're really difficult transition periods for them, but do we want to start kind of using that and labeling the child like that all the time, where it starts to kind of form part of their identity, and they think, oh, I can't manage change, or and then it's harder to kind of actually kind of help them to cope better with transitions, and obviously humiliating and shaming is something no one wants to be, but despite all that, sticks and stones words do actually hurt people, and we know that now, especially with people now coming through, just talking about the huge lifelong impact maybe bullying at school has had on them, for example, and how it still affects them deeply as adults, and it was things that people said to them, that have just resonated with them for the rest of their lives, and they've found it really hard to shake that off.
Yeah, and it's very easy, like you say, one sentence can be enough sometimes, which does feel like a heck of a responsibility as an adult, as a carer, as a parent.
Yeah, and if you find yourself like you have like slipped a wee bit, it's about going back later and saying, I'm really sorry, I was wrong. I really shouldn't have said that, and I don't actually mean it. You're not always a pain at the dinner table or something. I was frustrated. I think it's about having some kind of honesty, and kind of apologising when we're wrong and repairing those, those moments where we weren't at our best. Can actually, can mean an awful lot to a child, and actually can really help you in your relationship, because sometimes we expect children to do that, don't we? When they've said something that's upset us or done something, we expect them to come back with a big apology, but we're often as adults, we're not modeling that back ourselves, are we, when we say stuff or get a bit like in the morning when we're trying to get them all in the car, to go to school whenever they can go back to school. Yeah, so I think it should work both ways. Children should be able to see that. And I guess the very last of the traps I'd speak about would be about limiting a child's expression of emotion. So I think that can work in lots of different ways. So, one phrase might be something like "that will do" or "stop that." But another end of that spectrum is kind of like, cheer up, it's all right. So we don't let the children kind of just release that emotion and stuff. We might have stuff that's just being pent up, and we're trying to just suppress it and squash it. As adults, it's difficult for us. It might be at an inconvenient time or an inconvenient place, like in the middle of the supermarket and stuff. But it's just often we just want to stop it and shut it down. And obviously there needs to be some containment. And especially if children are like hurting themselves, or that you or other family members or friends, or they're destroying things, then you want to kind of put some kind of boundary around that for safety purposes. But just sitting and being with the child when they're upset, and crying, and allowing that to happen, and not trying just to kind of gee them along and cheer them up, or trying to stop them, being angry and stuff. Actually, it's again, it's one of those things that has like a really kind of long lasting message, or kind of taking the children off and just letting them be upset in another room on their own. Give very strong kind of messages out to their children. So I'm going to use this point to kind of tip into the things that we kind of should kind of maybe say. So for all the positive stuff we can do. So when you've got a child and they're angry, again, you don't want to be going into the lecture, but you want to acknowledge it. So just something short and sweet. And I know this sounds, the first time I was ever taught this, I used to work with like children in residential care and stuff, and I thought they're just going to use expletives, to tell me where to go. I thought, honestly, they're not going to work. But honestly, just real simple statements like, I can see you're really angry right now, or really sad, actually doesn't, I can't tell how powerful it is, but I've worked with all these children, who you think that they're just going to tell me where to go, because that's going to sound like really patronising or condescending or something. But actually, just that, oh, okay, you recognise what I'm trying to say through my behaviour. It's actually really powerful, and it might not stop the whole thing, but I've certainly kind of seen the children start to kind of come down, if nothing else, or you might kind of understand a bit why they're upset. So, especially with young children, I might say, "Oh, you're upset because Mummy said you couldn't have a biscuit just now, right?" And it's like, "Oh, right, okay, she gets it," and it does at least bring the children down, a little bit, so they can just be a bit calmer. But I think acknowledging that, and this will probably sound quite counterintuitive, and they don't always want it, but offer a cuddle. Because when they're really upset or angry or something, I think it feels counterintuitive, because normally, back in the day, or my day, if you were showing emotions like that, it would have been, that's not on, get to your room, and it would have been like a punishment. But actually, when you kind of say, I can see you're really upset or you're really angry right now, would you like a cuddle or something? Actually, that can really bring the child down. And when we're doing that, we're helping the children, to start to regulate themselves. All that, regulation of emotion and self-soothing starts by us as adults teaching children those skills. It starts with them as babies and toddlers, and some of our children, they didn't get that as babies and toddlers. Or even a bit later on, they still, they still don't get it. So it's our role, as parents, foster carers, to be teaching some of that regulation, what that kind of looks like. And I know that sounds a bit odd when they're in the, to kind of offer a cuddle when they're shouting at you, "I hate you," and rolling about on the floor and thumping, the floor, and maybe like lobbing a ball at you and stuff. But it's like, just trying to kind of bring that down, acknowledge that can actually really make a big difference.
And I guess I'm thinking about some of the children and young people I've worked with where birth parents have probably been unable to regulate their own emotions, and therefore emotions become really scary, terrifying things, and obviously sometimes, sadly, that can come with violence within the birth family. And for you to, as a carer, to not be daunted and intimidated by that emotion sometimes can be quite nurturing, can't it, and quite reassuring for the child.
Yeah, it can, and maybe also a bit strange sometimes. So actually, kids might try to push it because they're looking for that more chaotic familiarity. But so it's something that really kind of you have to keep playing consistently. So the first, so many times, it might kind of take the kids back, and they're like, "No, this is not what I want, because this doesn't feel familiar to me," and as strange as that seems to us, there's maybe a comfort in that chaos for the children because it's what they knew. When you think about attachment, it's almost like it's in the DNA, it's in the kind of blood, and your work here as parents is to kind of turn that ship around, so it can take a while, but to keep doing that, consistently can have really great effects. And to be with a regulated adult, children will respond to that. It can just take time, and letting go of what they're familiar with. They're trying to change their habits and ways of being. It's not an overnight thing for them. So another thing was, the showing that you understand their feelings, keeping that simple, and it's not just about the sad stuff too, it's about the nice stuff. So like, oh, you look really excited about that, and again, in that dysregulation, they may have also seen adults that when they started playing with each other, they got excited, they couldn't stop. And the children too high, and they got too high, and then actually becomes overwhelming, and it's really hard to kind of bring them down. Or then all of a sudden the parent says, "Oh, that's enough," right? So they've took them right sky high, and then they're like, "Oh, that's enough." They've like got to their tolerance now, but the kids still right up there, and they don't know what to do. It's really hard to bring them down, and you might find children like that too. That when they start, you're being playful with them, they find it hard to kind of limit that. So again, you can use those words, those boundaries, just to kind of bring them down and keep regulating them. And obviously, you won't be taking them up as sky high in the first place. But it's not just about using those kind of phrases when the children are upset or angry. It's also about when they're excited, or you can say that they're pleased about something. Just to acknowledge and show you understand their feelings. It's just, gosh, this person, they're really watching and hearing me, and it feels like they understand me. So that has like a really positive impact on the children. And this is my next one, praise. And it's always quite a mixed bag, praise, isn't it? Because people say you shouldn't praise children, otherwise they don't kind of, not to never be nice, but not to kind of like overly do praise, because otherwise they have no kind of sense of I can't think of that. They're like, not autonomy, but they're just kind of, they're not doing it for themselves. Is the right
okay.
The praise, but I actually think children do need some praise, but it would make it
definitely.
And stuff. So not just like throwing, well done, good, that's a good job. Oh gosh, I could see you really struggled with that, and you found a way how to do it. Well done. Or you say, oh, you must be so proud of yourself. Well done. Things like that. Giving them praise, showing them thanks. When you're grateful for something. Maybe like they've done something nice for you. They've like took the dinner plate out to the kitchen or something, or my daughter's only 20, but she loves passing me my slippers. But for stuff like that, it's just tiny stuff, isn't it? Not to be like massive gestures, but it's all these things that kind of like build up more kind of like a sense of relationship and connection, and being cooperative and working together. Can be really helpful in a relationship. So it's about saying thanks and giving praise. Because that kind of leads on to using your language to let your child know what they've heard and seen. And that's so powerful for children, especially for children who felt so invisible. That they're maybe not being seen by their parents, they're maybe not being seen by the school system or the social work system or the mental health system. That in all that kind of all that kind of structure and everything that's kind of going on, and maybe the chaos of the parents and stuff, sometimes their children become, I wouldn't want to say invisible, but they become quite small in that, and it's hard to kind of see and to keep the focus on. So when you're showing that you can see what they've done, and you're showing that you notice their achievements and their emotions and everything, that is really powerful for children. And of course, I don't think I've actually used the word play yet, Yoni. Right. 24 minutes and I've not used the word play. Not like me. But my last one really would to say to be playful with language. So again, it's about bringing fun elements into your relationship, and using play and being playful with your language can just make some things that are like toothbrushing and stuff, the laborious stuff that can be really difficult to get around. Make it fun. Use your language in a fun way. Make kind of requests into games. So if you're trying to get them to put the clothes in the wash basket, get them to see if they can stand at a distance and chuck the socks in to the washing basket. Try and make it playful. You're asking them, I don't know, maybe this is about confidence, but this is the kind of nonsense I get up to every day. But you're asking them what they want for their breakfast or something. Sing the question. You're actually helping the language when you do that. But just doing silly things sometimes like singing a question. I'm not going to sing now.
That's a shame.
In Glasgow already, right? Kind of doing those things and just making it fun, and try not to make everything like an uphill struggle. You find games and different ways around things. Be funny with language. It can really help and just kind of just make it a relationship together more enjoyable, and make your time with the children more enjoyable. Because it's hard work looking after children, whatever age they are. And it's a big chunk of your day, so you might as well try and make it, kind of enjoyable and fun for yourself as well as for the children.
Yeah, and definitely if they're having fun, then life goes rather more smoothly.
That's right. Yeah, helps the day go a bit quicker, doesn't it? If you can just, just kind of put some more playful elements in there.
You might say this isn't related, but I'm just thinking about names. We're talking about language, and names are so important to children, particularly coming into a family. Just wondered whether you got any thoughts or comments about sort of maintaining names and using their given names or family names.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the age of the child, doesn't it? And you probably got a lot of experience around this, but I think it's important for them to kind of keep that sense of identity, isn't it? Or maybe they just like to use an abbreviation of the name if it's quite long, or and maybe kind of steering away from nicknames, especially ones you kind of give yourself, unless you kind of find something like that you both kind of like. I think, but it's important to kind of keep their identity. It's keeping that sense of kind of who they are, isn't it? But they might like an abbreviation of the name, so I'll be asking the children where you can. Obviously, for some children, it's not possible, but I don't know. What's your experience, Yoni, on that?
I think I think particularly, obviously, it's more relevant to adopters, but that in adoption groups, there's a lot of discussion about changing names and maybe giving children and young people a new name. And I really struggle with it. I'm going to be honest, in that it's one of the only things that the birth parents give the child that remains with them. And obviously, there are some situations where names are wholly unsuitable, or perhaps so identifiable that actually it wouldn't be safe. But I think it's quite important to maintain the same names as they come with in the sort of their, don't want to say Christian names, but their first names. Certainly, my experience was that my adopters changed my name, and I really struggled with that. And then I used my middle name, and that didn't fit. And then I chose my own name. But the name is so much about your identity, and I think there's some evidence to suggest that people grow into the names they're given as well. So yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because like Lem Sissay, the poem, who was adopted pretty much, well, not from birth, but like very, very young, like a few months old, and his family, who are like a white Christian family, called him Norman. And it was not until he kind of got into his teenage years they actually found out that his name was Lem Sissay. And I think that actually opened up like a whole. I mean, his story is absolutely horrible. The way it has been
Yeah,
treated.
it is
If you ever get a
upsetting.
chance to read My Name Is Why, it's an excellent book, but there's definitely you can't come out of it dry-eyed.
Mm.
But I just love Limsessy anyway. But um, just what it opened up to him and how it started opening up his Ethiopian heritage, and um, then the other opportunity was able to kind of access from that, but that kind of sense, starting to get more of that sense of himself and what his real
Mm.
identity was really important to him, and a lot of that actually stemmed from his name, knowing what
Yeah,
his true name was.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess
No.
like you say, some children are given some very unique names that might not be the first choice of a lot of other parents. And
Mm.
I can kind of understand the temptation, knowing some of the children I've worked with, to want to maybe change their names. And sometimes maybe that is, it might be something for
Mm.
safe. But I think it's always important that the children know what name they were given at birth, if nothing else.
Yeah,
But to try
yeah,
and
definitely.
keep their name, if you kind of
Mm.
think it is important to their sense of identity. And like you say, it's one of the very few things that they have that is truly them.
Mm.
Mhm.
Mm. No, I think um, languages and names are so important. I'm thinking about what you were saying about how parents talk to their children, and that um, in adults we have so much sort of sometimes negative self-talk, particularly as
Mhm.
women, self-critical um, voices, which are often, well, certainly, and I know mine is my mother
Mhm.
to some extent, saying repeating things that perhaps she said critically as a child, and it is very important not to sort of sow those seeds, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And even sometimes as adults we can make quite innocuous comments to children, like, "Oh, I don't know, I'll make something up now." They do something that's just like a genuine mistake, and they're, "Oh, you're dafty," and it keeps happening.
Mm.
But you know, if that keeps being heard, it becomes ingrained in the self, and until you kind of believe that, oh, you're definitely you're born this perfect little human being, and this blank canvas, and it's all about
Mm.
what keeps being put onto that canvas becomes part of the picture of what makes that person, and it's strange, isn't it? That often it's the negative comments that stick more than the positives. I'm still
Mm.
not quite sure why, but those comments, where they're kind of intentionally kind of critical because they thought
Mm.
the parent or the adult thought it would actually kind of help you um,
Mm.
to be better, or whether it's just as, oh, you're dafty or something, or you know,
Mm.
or I don't know, to call them silly and stuff. Actually does kind of feed into our kind of sense of self, and it's hard to erase that.
Mm. Yeah, so it's I think, like I was saying, it does sometimes feel quite a high level of pressure, and I suppose one of the things
Mhm.
that I think it's really important to emphasize is that parenting throughout, whether you're adopting or fostering or birth parent, you do the best that you can with the tools that you've got, and there are going to be times when you make mistakes because
Oh,
we're so we're so perfectionist. We all feel, particularly I think adopters
mhm,
and foster carers, when they're starting off, feel like you must never make a mistake. And obviously there are some things that you must never do, but most of it is you try the best that you can with the tools that you've got, and learn and listen and ask for help or advice.
mhm.
I think those are the messages. Really, you're not going to get it right 99% of the time.
No, we're human and we come with our own baggage, right? But I think what's important for children is we acknowledge our humanness, and when we're not always going to get it right. My language isn't always like what I've just talked about. Sometimes I have like a moment, but what I would do is,
Mm.
I feel rotten about it, and I'll go back, and apologize straight away, and I was in the
Mm.
wrong there. I'm sorry, Mummy was, had too much to do just then, and I was in a bit of a rush, shouty or whatever. So just bring your humanness to it, because and your authenticity, because that's what we want to see and kind of encourage and nurture in our children as well. And we have to model that first. And we're not going to get it right all the time, but it's just acknowledging when we've not, and kind of trying to right those blips when we make them.
Brilliant. I think that's a wonderful message to leave on. Thank you, Keeley. That was really interesting. Just to say to people who are free, 11 o'clock tomorrow, we've got the yoga with children with Becky Shuttleworth. So really looking forward to that. Thank you, Keeley, and see you next week. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.